Hello, and welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
This is the podcast about murders and so much more. We will talk about anything strange, anything that goes bump in the night, and pretty much anything that amuses us.
And on that note, we need to mention that this podcast is not safe for work or delicate ears, so do be discerning who you listen to it with.
We also want to let you know that you can find us on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram, so look for us there.
I am Shannon Lawrence. I am a writer, mom, wife, student, procrastinator, and you can find me at thewarriormuse.com.
My name is MB Partlow. I am a writer, an avid reader, an organizer extraordinaire, a mom to kids, cats, and a dog, and I call bullshit when I see it.
Hello!
Hi!
And welcome to the podcast.
Dee. I was like, that was not where I wanted to go with the musical mood, but that's where it went.
But it's where we are.
It is where we are.
So here we
We're
remain.
still, I'm going to, because this will go out next week, I'm going to say we are both still recovering from Mile High Club.
We probably will be still when this comes out. Yeah.
Probably at Thanksgiving we might be caught up.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been wanting to post and just be like, now, because there have been a bunch of cons.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the time of the year for them. And I just want to post, like, how is everybody feeling about cons at this point? Because, woo, I am not back in the place I used to be with them. I didn't want to do BarCon, which for those who don't go to cons is after hours when everybody meets up in the bar and just fills it up and talks. And I didn't want to.
No. I mean, we went in the hotel's bar / restaurant for dinner on Friday night. Yeah. We did sit there for quite a while, but nobody was drinking.
No, and we just sat at a table mostly by, with our little mini group of people.
Yeah.
And then went upstairs instead of, usually we would have jumped into the fray and mingled. Nope.
We didn't look for parties. We didn't.
No.
It was like,
We just went to our room. Listen to the crazy people next door.
Yeah. Yep. And I will say, so I haven't been to any other con except for Mile High in a very long time. I thought they did a good job with people staying masked.
Yes.
Everybody seemed very respectful of that. They had hand sanitizer in the little tiny bottles that were about a sneeze's worth of hand sanitizer. But they were handing it out and... people seem to be... Now, they did not space the chairs out. They said, we're going to put extra space in between. There was not. There was not. If you were above a size 4, you were sitting in your neighbor's lap still. Chunky people need seats.
There was the usual... There were a couple older folks who the mask would slip down under their nose and just...
What was hilarious was the panel you did the reading with.
Yeah.
Because there was an older gentleman... who probably wasn't that much older, really, than I am. But he was a little bit curmudgeonly. And so, next. But when one of the readers did not promptly put his mask back up, the guy was like, hey, mask back up.
Yeah.
It's like, you go.
All right. I know. I was working on it. But he was like, I want to take my mask down and yours needs to be up if I'm taking it down. Because... we didn't have microphones, and so everybody was trying to be loud enough that an entire room of people could hear them through a mask, which was tricky. But I do know, we know from conference planning and stuff, the mics cost extra. And these cons aren't high-budget things. Those of us who are speaking on panels and stuff, we're not getting paid like you could be at a writer's conference, but you get free entry, for example, and they're not feeding us like they would at a writer's conference. So if you speak at a writer's conference, even though you won't get paid unless you're one of the bigger names that are there, then you still get free food, which is, just so people know, a shit ton of money.
Oh, yeah.
On the part of the conference.
If you go to a conference that has food, understand that at least 50% of your conference fee is just paying for the food.
At least, yeah. And the rest is honoraria and flights and supplies.
Swag.
Unless it's a for-profit place, but we're talking about a nonprofit.
Yeah.
So probably different, but it's probably more expensive to go to one that's not for a nonprofit. Because we're straight up just trying to cover our expenses and support the rest of the year's stuff.
I don't know. I've never been to a for-profit one. I don't think. Joe has.
Comic-Con?
Oh, maybe. Yeah. But I haven't been to that.
That's true.
Because I was like, all those people? No. And I am a very sociable being. And I went, all those people? Nuh-uh.
No, I don't mind you.
So you know what fun thing I did this week? Ha ha.
What would that be?
So I found this online horror writing course. And I sent it to you and said, because I thought you would know if there were, oh no, I've heard about this and it's terrible. Don't go anywhere near it. Which is not what you said.
No, I had Ramsey Campbell and Graham Masterton.
Yeah, it had some good people associated with it. So I thought, oh, maybe not necessarily that I want to write a ton of horror, but I thought, okay, it's a writing class. It'll be good for me. So it started Monday, and I got back in town on Sunday, and I was so tired I didn't sign up. So I thought, I'll do it Monday. I'll get home in the afternoon and have enough time because it started at 4:00. Ha ha. Did not have enough time. They were like, the next class starts November 1st. And I just went, well, shit.
Well, November 1st is still doable.
That is. And I was just like, well, I'll just write down those dates and cross out the other ones. But if people want a horror writing class,
then hey, yeah, I'm going to be on a panel. It's for Pikes Peak Writers, which is where we used to volunteer. And it's just called the Horror Panel Special Event. But it's Saturday, October 16th from 12:30 to 3:30 p.m. Mountain Time. And I'll be on the panel. Karina Bissett will be on it. And Sumiko Salson. I don't know the man that's on it.
I don't remember his name.
So I can't mention him. But I think he's only going to be there for part of the time. But there is a $20 fee for this one. People can sign up at pikespeakwriters.com. And then I'm reading a horror story. I don't know which one yet.
When is that?
That is Wednesday, October 20th. That one's in the evening, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. And that's Stories Live, and it's broadcast on YouTube, and it's totally free. So if people want to, there'll be people reading all different things. But since it's October, they're all probably going to be trying to do something, at least scary. Dark and creepy.
You should mention this again next week, because they can, if they listen to the podcast during the day, they can still listen to Stories Live that night.
That's true. And also the Stories Live will be online available from here on out. Because Stories Live has, if people ever like to listen to readings, they do it every single month, and they have a YouTube channel, so those are always available. But I have a hard time listening to readings, but I know other people like to.
Yes.
And they have a theme, but we don't have to stick to the theme, which is nice. I already had to do that this week. Write a story for something that I don't usually try to stick to a theme.
So what movie did you watch?
You know what? I'm going to mention, because this one, Sundown, the Vampire in Retreat, had Bruce Campbell and David Carradine. I think I watched it on Prime. Oh my God, I had never heard of it. Like, I thought I knew about all his movies, but looking at his IMDb, I do not. But there's a town. It's like in the middle of the desert, and it's full of vampires. But they're trying to go straight, see? So they don't eat people.
Okay.
They make, in their own town, a synthetic blood that they can eat.
Okay.
But there's a group of them in this town that have decided that they don't want to do that anymore, and they want their rights back. They want it how it used to be. And so they want to drink people's blood again. And when they drink people's blood, they kill them. And then here comes Bruce Campbell, and he's a descendant of course, the great vampire hunter.
Van Helsing?
Yes.
Ah.
And it just goes all kinds of weird. It is so goofy. But there's these three harbingers. Like, if people watch horror movies, and especially, Friday the 13th, I think, is really kind of the original harbinger at the gas station, where he's like, don't go up there! And
God, there's that in Pumpkinhead.
Yes, and so many. There's some sort of harbingers like that. You shouldn't go over there. Don't go to that mental hospital that's closed down. And Cabin in the Woods, of course, makes fun of the harbinger, and it's, oh my God, it's the funniest thing ever.
Yes, it is.
But anyway, there's these three little old men in their overalls. They've all got their denim overalls and their like blue shirts, and then they've got these giant sun hats on because they're vampires. And they all wear like a shit ton of sunblock and stuff, and they just sit in this swing. Like this is all three of them in this swing in front of the gas station.
I can picture it.
They're so fun. So yeah, it's as cheesy as hell, but it was so funny.
I want to see that.
Yeah, I think
I
it's on
actually
Prime.
have it marked to watch it this month.
What did you watch?
I saw a couple of things. I haven't seen any actual movies. I can't remember if I talked about this last time. If I flip the page, I can tell. I don't think I did. I've been watching Hacks on HBO. Finally finished the first season. It's Jean Smart is in it. From a lot of people would know her from Designing Women. I know she's done stuff since then, but that's where I remember her from. And she's a stand-up comedian. And she has this big regular show in Vegas, and she has her fingers in a lot of different pies.
Wait, in real life?
No.
Okay, in the show.
No.
I was like, she's a stand-up comedian in Vegas?
I segued without any transition. As I tend to do. My conversational style is havoc.
Chaos.
So in the show, she's a stand-up comedian in Vegas with her fingers in a bunch of different pies. Like she has a QVC show and she has a product line and she does this, that, and the other thing. But they're telling her she needs fresh new material because she's kind of gotten into a routine. And then there's this young woman who is a writer, a comedy writer, who's kind of been blackballed for saying something controversial. And it's great because Jean Smart says to her, you didn't get blackballed because it was controversial. You got blackballed because it wasn't funny. So there is a lot of humor in it, but there is also a lot of heart.
Yeah.
Because it's the developing relationship between the two of them, the friendship and the misstarts and the backslides. And it's really funny and it's really good.
Okay. I'll have to check it out.
It is called Hacks.
I might already have it in my queue because I knew I'd heard of it before you mentioned it.
He's good. And I'm still trying to finish Only Murders in the Building, which is on Hulu. With Steve Martin and Martin Short and Selena Gomez.
Speaking of which, I don't think we've watched the latest episode. So I'm watching Midnight Mass. Are you going to check that out on Netflix?
I'm going to, but I haven't yet.
So for anybody who tunes into
Netflix?
it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a slow burn because it's by the same people who did The Haunting of, Hill House and then The Haunting of Bly Manor. Slow burn, but it picks up. And honestly, I think it's good. And I've heard people, talking about it, whether you're religious or not, it's really good. It's dark. And when the shit hits the fan and I think it's, what do they call it? What is it? It's like book Gospel 1, something like that for instead of like a chapter or an episode name. And when you hit, I think 5, it hits the fan and you're just like, holy shit. But there's this one character and my God, everybody, you love to hate her. Oh, she's insufferable. But her cognitive dissonance is fascinating and how she adjusts to a certain situation and just pops it into her belief system is absolutely astounding. It is so good. Like the writing is really good with that. But it's funny, the number of people I've seen post okay, I'm watching episode 1. Is it worth it to keep going? Because, I'm not sure. And everybody's like, yes, keep going. But I would agree with that.
One of my coworkers has watched the whole thing. She binged it.
Yeah.
Could not stop watching it. And I was like, oh, it's on my list. I said, because people were talking about it at Mile High Con, and I was like, don't say anything.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, I think the only reason that I got through maybe the first episode, second episode, is because I had heard people saying good stuff about it and because I was doing something else. I was catching up on my checkbook, which I haven't done in a year. I mean, I was popping online and checking it, but I hadn't actually put it in the checkbook, which I'm one of maybe 5 people left in the world that do that anymore anyway. But I am determined to go through and do it from a year ago. So anyway, I was doing that. And so I was only kind of half paying attention. And it's not that it was bad or anything. It was just, again, slow burn. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to give it a chance because I've heard so many people raving about it. But it's funny, you just watch it's like dominoes online as people watch it and go, holy shit, Midnight Mass is so good. So it's like you forget the slow burn once you get to where it's going crazy. But Yeah, highly recommend that one. It's super good. You know what else I watched?
What?
The Burbs.
Really?
Yeah.
That's like the first movie that ever really creeped me out, and I don't feel any need to revisit it.
Really?
Yeah, I was
But it's
little.
so funny. Oh.
I was.
It's a Tom Hanks movie.
Wait. Oh, The Burbs. I thought you meant
The
The Birds.
I should watch that. I haven't watched that in a while.
No, The Burbs did not terrify me.
I was like, you were little when Tom Hanks was in it?
Yeah.
I wasn't little. But
The Burbs.
Burbs.
Like this,
with Carrie Fisher and Tom
Yes.
Hanks and
the
Henry
abbreviation
Berry.
for the suburbs.
Yeah, oh my God. I love that movie. It's an annual rewatch, not necessarily in October.
What's it on? Or do you know?
I own it on DVD. So I don't know. It's probably somewhere, but
Probably.
if somebody hasn't seen that or just hasn't watched it in a while, it's still so freaking good.
I remember
it's
it
so
being funny.
perfect. Oh, and Corey Feldman is in it, which is probably the reason I watched it in the first place
Yep.
at that time period. But he's hysterical as like this teenage boy. I mean, upper teenage, you know. But
Yeah.
and he's just partying. He has all these people in the crowd at his house getting bigger and bigger as they watch these idiot suburban men. I mean, you know, trying to solve the creepy neighbor problem and
I loved
daring
him.
each other.
Loved him in Lost Boys.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I love Lost Boys.
Did you watch the Frog Brothers sequel that came out
No.
later? It's him and the guy who played his brother
Right.
originally.
How was
Holy
it?
crap. Was Corey Haim in it or was he already dead? I don't know. I only watched it once, but I seem to recall it being entertaining. So, oh yeah, Lost Boys is at least an annual watch too.
Oh, yeah.
You have to watch that one at least once a year.
That and Fright Night.
Oh yeah, the original.
I prefer the original,
Yeah.
but I'm not mad at the remake.
No, they're both enjoyable.
Yeah. It was so funny. I can't remember what the hell the comment was. I was watching it with Lucy, who does not like horror movies.
Oh,
And
okay.
and I said to her, okay, Fright Night was made in the 80s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I said, it's really got some, I said, it's not super scary. It's got some very funny moments. And I said something about, I can't remember what her reason was, because I said something about, why is the vampire always eating an apple?
Yeah.
And she's like, for texture. People aren't crunchy when you bite into them.
I think there was trivia about that. About, oh shit, I just forgot his name. The dude who plays the vampire. But
Chris Sarandon?
yes.
Oh my
There was
God.
some sort of trivia on IMDb and now I can't remember it. But I do remember another piece of trivia from it. So the girl in it, the girlfriend and the one that Sarandon is after.
Yeah, whose boobs magically get bigger
Yes, it's a chess piece.
when she becomes a vampire.
Yeah, and she I don't remember her name, but she played Marcy on Married with Children.
Yes, I can't remember her name either.
But so she had a chess piece. There was a fake chess because they wanted her sexier when she
Yes.
turns vampire, right? And so that meant bigger boobs and long. Her
And
hair
longer
suddenly
hair,
gets long. So anyway, she took that chess piece with her to cons and stuff like that. So people could see it and just set it on the table with her.
That's
It was
hilarious.
so ridiculous. But that she had to suddenly have giant boobs that you're a vampire, and when you become a vampire, your boobs get bigger, which for some women should be alarming because they're already
yes.
too big.
Well, it's like in Buffy, the Vampire Slayer, the series. All the vampires spring forth from their graves knowing how to do martial arts.
Right.
Nobody ever tries to hit Buffy with a shovel. They're all trying to do the spin kicks and the...
Yeah.
I'm like, really? What is it about dying that makes you a martial arts expert?
Yeah, that reminds me, that maybe that's what you were thinking about because you're talking about John Wick and how it was like realistic fighting. Like it was actual dirty fighting sometimes.
Yeah, on the
not
ground
everybody
sometimes. Yeah.
knows martial arts. Example. Buffy. What did you read?
I've read so many things. I'm reading one. I can't talk about it till I finish it. I read by a local author, Chopping Spree
Angie.
by Angela Sylvain.
Yeah.
It was really entertaining because it's set in a mall, and it's after malls have become not popular. Like they're not as popular now as they used to be. But how this town has poured all this money into this mall, and it's revitalizing the town, and how she slowly learns what's really going on
Yeah.
behind
So
that.
they're doing Denver Horror Collective, by the way, is doing a thing with her. Again, free, but you have to
Oh.
RSVP, where she talks about the book and you can ask her questions.
Oh,
If you want to
cool.
sign up for that,
I might do
I
that.
should I should look that up and edit out some time because it's in November, I think.
I don't know if it's a novel or a novella.
I believe it's a novella.
I think it is. It's not that long. It's not super long. It's a quick read and it's very entertaining. It's very good. And the whole teenage girl thing is love it.
I'll edit out my thinky time.
And then I read it, and then I read it. Please edit that word out.
Then I read it. I did a weird word like that yesterday. Luckily, just in my head, so it didn't actually happen to anybody. I didn't say it to anybody stupidly. But yeah, I don't remember what it was. But I did it.
Uh-huh. So the other thing I read was Lies We Bury by L. Marr. It was really funny. It made me very, very tense. Tenser than I thought it should have. It's a very suspenseful book. It's written from the point of view of a young woman who, she's an adult. I mean, she has a job. She's a grown-up. But she was born in captivity. This guy kidnapped 3 women and kept them in a bunker and impregnated them.
Oh,
and one of the moms finally, but one of the women escaped and never sent help. What a fuck you that was. One died in childbirth and the other woman got them out. And it's the relationship between these 3 girls that were born there and their mothers, and one of them is being stalked.
Okay.
And the whole inciting incident that kicks everything off is the main character is alerted, and she's a photographer now, but she's alerted that the man who imprisoned them he's been in prison for 20 years and he's about to be released.
Oh. Do you know the weird man keeps a woman in a bunker and impregnates her thing is oddly popular on TV shows, movies, and such?
It's a twisty trope.
Because it's happened in real life, and I think it inspired just a crap ton.
Well, I read the book Room.
Yeah.
Which is told from the point of view of the little boy.
That's born
there, and his mom breaks him out.
Okay.
And that didn't freak me out. I don't know why this one did. I think it's her personality and it's her uncertainty.
Okay.
And she's also I also think is the fact that this woman is she's about 20. I want to say she's 29 because I think she was 9 when they got out and the guy's been in prison 20 years. But she's very tightly wound in that she really wants to control the narrative of her life. Not that I blame her.
Right.
But she doesn't want anyone to know who she was. She wants to be accepted for who she is now, and she tries to hide. She doesn't want people walking up going, "Oh, you're that girl who was
right,
born in underground." And so she's trying to escape that, and it's really, really good, I thought.
Yeah. So sounds interesting.
What have you been reading?
Before I say what I read,
yes.
I'm going to throw out, so the Denver Horror Collective thing, for anybody who's interested, is they have a Facebook page that you can go to, but it is November 7th from 5 to 7 p.m. Mountain Time, and it's called the DHC Book Cult and Author Q&A, but I think, anybody can attend it, and it'll just be talking about her book and all that good stuff. Okay. So, what I read, so it was a collection of horror short stories, After Sundown, and it's edited by Mark Morris. And I can no longer remember the standout stories, but honestly, except for the first one, I was like, I heard this was really good and I didn't really enjoy the first one, but then after that, it was just better and better and better. So, super good anthology.
Cool.
Every little once in a while, I have to throw an anthology in there to read. Mm-hmm. Get my short horror stories out of the way. All right. Are we ready?
I think we are. Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
I can go first.
Okay.
If you're thinking of starting a podcast or even just starting to research it, Buzzsprout is your go-to source for information and hosting. They have tons of videos and write-ups on everything you need to know about recording and distributing a podcast, and they even provide easy ways to get analytics on how your podcast is doing. We use Buzzsprout for our podcast hosting, and through them, we've been able to connect with tons of resources and distributors. Following a link in the show notes lets Buzzsprout know we sent you, gets you a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up for a paid plan, and help support our show. A win-win. Not only do they help you get started, but they also do small things to encourage you, such as awarding you badges as you hit various milestones. Join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world.
All right. So, and I posted about this one. It was on like a weird facts page that I'm on. Henry Berry Lowry.
Never heard of him.
He was sort of a Robin Hood figure in North Carolina. My sources, Wikipedia, NCpedia, so that's, North Carolina-pedia, North Carolina Museum of History, and Medium. Henry Berry Lowry was born around 1845 or 1846, in North Carolina. He was mixed race, white and Lumbee. It's actually Scottish and Lumbee. And one of 12 or 14 children. 10 of them were boys. And he was the youngest of those 10 boys.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, they lived on a successful 350-acre farm. And at this time, that period, his family and the Lumbee tribe were considered free people of color in that area.
Okay.
So there were limitations, but they were free. However, they had lost a significant amount of their farmland due to various efforts against Native and mixed race people who remained in that area. And that's because they had escaped forcible removals happening in that time. They were landowners. It's really odd. Like, I want to know more about how they were trying to work this system where we've removed your family member, but we're going to consider you free, but you're not allowed to own guns, for example. Like, you can't have weapons. So anyway, in addition, the Home Guard, they were left behind to keep law during the Civil War. Mm-hmm. So they're kind of the police force, basically. And they constantly were accusing Lumbee citizens of theft, hiding deserters, all this stuff. So they were constantly after them. And they would just basically set up kangaroo courts and try them. And there isn't much information about his youth, but his family formed the Lowry gang. I believe it was his oldest brother, William, who originally started that going, with the intention of hiding fellow tribesmen who were to be conscripted by the Confederate government to build military forts around the mouth of the Cape Fear River or to work in the salt mines, because the able-bodied white men were in the war. They were off fighting the Civil War, right? And so they figured... So the problem was that the local farmers and such wouldn't give their slaves to do the work because they didn't think they'd get them back.
Right.
Because it was hard work, and the way they treated the men meant deadly work.
Right.
There was also a yellow fever epidemic, which had chased any of the other folks that were there that were able to work out. So they would just go, the Confederate government would come, and they would just conscript the natives in the area that were free, right?
Good God.
So... The gang hid people throughout the Civil War, and near the end, the Lowry gang had brought in escaped Union prisoners that had escaped from the local Confederate prisons and started guerrilla warfare against the Confederacy. Because the Confederacy they were the government.
Right.
And so they were fighting them. Henry's brother, William, started hiding them out in the swamps. They would basically squat in the swamps to avoid getting picked up for this work. However, in December of 1864, a neighbor named James P. Barnes, who had been a problem for them for quite some time, he was a white dude, and he didn't like having, a mixed race family that owned such a big landowner near him. He accused the boy's father, Allen, of stealing hogs from him. Henry ended up killing Barnes, and that was his first murder. And I did find one article that said these have been attributed to Henry, but were they? Who knows? In January 1865, he once again killed. This time it was a conscription officer who was mistreating the women in the Lowry family and who had killed 3 of his cousins. This man's name was James Brantley Harris. And then Henry also killed a scout for the Home Guard who was coming around. Possibly because of these actions and, of course, the usual accusing them of things. The Home Guard searched Allen's home in March of 1865, and they found firearms. Right. Bear in mind, his dad, I believe, was... Well, I don't know if his dad was the Scottish one or not. Probably not then. because they wouldn't have cared so much about the woman being the person of color, you know. So I find it interesting that none of the sources said who was who.
That is kind of interesting.
Yeah. But anyway, they found firearms, and that was a big no-no. And so that very day, they made their little court, you know, gathered some people together, tried, convicted, and...
Damn.
Yep. And then put them to death. They executed them right then and there.
Shit.
Yeah. That's how fast it worked. If you weren't white. So after Henry was 18 at the time, and he hid in the bushes, so he watched them die.
So how many people were put to death?
Just William and Alan. So his oldest brother and his dad.
Okay. Because you said there were 12 kids?
Yeah.
So I was just... But if he was the youngest and he was 18...
And I suspect several, because Henry was the youngest, so William stuck around to help probably run the farm and all that good stuff. And I don't know about the others, because they really don't come into play. One of them was a reverend.
Oh, wow.
Because he does get mentioned. But, yeah, they were off living their lives, because if Henry was the youngest boy and he was 18...
I mean, and they could have been out...
And they could have been fighting in the Civil War, who knows?
350 acres, they could have been out... They could have just not been home.
Right.
Or lived on the other side of the... Okay.
And so Henry ended up taking over the Lowry gang, which also leads me to believe the other brothers weren't around, because he was the youngest. So the Lowry gang was almost entirely Native American, but there were freed black men and at least one white man that they kept mentioning. His name was like Zachariah something, and he was a poor white man. The gang started committing robberies, but they stood out because they were always respectful during the robberies. And if someone could show that they couldn't afford to be robbed, the gang would leave them be. They would go, okay, I understand. They would leave.
Nice.
They would give a receipt sometimes and be like, okay, well, like, we won't come back and rob you for X number of months or something so that you'll be okay.
It's like the Thieves Guild in Terry Pratchett's books.
Yes. And they never took all the possessions or valuables, so they'd leave them something to live on. And they wouldn't attack the same people multiple times within that specific time period. So they came to be seen very much as Robin Hood types because they would share the spoils with others who needed the money or the food. So like they'd go and they'd steal corn from this farmer, right? Who was well off, a good landowner, and then they would distribute that corn. So very much Robin Hood type story. And they were even known to return things. Like if they stole like a horse and cart for something specific, they would return it after they used it.
Ah, like if they stole it to rob a bank.
Right. Then you would get your wagon back.
That's very thoughtful.
So they continued attacking the upper class for years. That's who they were specifically after. Upper class, Confederate, yeah. Well into the Reconstruction following the Civil War. The Republican governor, and I'm going to talk, I don't remember if I specify this, but just to be clear, during this time, the Republicans were the liberals.
Right, yes.
So, just so people are reminded. So, the Republican governor, William Woods Holden, had such a problem with him that he put out monetary reward for the capture of Lowry gang members, dead or alive, and they were declared outlaws. The Lowry gang also committed murders, to be clear, with most of their victims being those who had murdered the father and brother. So, they specifically went after these people, and those people they went after the Home Guard folks.
Right.
December 7th, 1865, during a lull in activity, because things had kind of calmed down, so Henry wasn't so much going after the people anymore because they weren't so much coming after them. Henry married a woman named Rhoda Strong, and during the celebration following the ceremony, the county militia, which was made up of ex-Confederate Home Guards, came in and arrested him for the murder of James Barnes. So you'll remember that's the man who accused Henry's father of stealing his hogs.
Right.
Way back when. Gang members snuck him a file, like literally from the movies, snuck him a file, and he filed through the metal bars and escaped the prison.
Wow.
So the new governor put a $300 bounty on his head, but it didn't lead to his capture because they were going in the swamps. And guess what? Militia, Home Guard, whatever, they don't want to chase natives into the swamps.
No.
It won't benefit them in any way because they were familiar with the swamps. Post-war, conservative Democrats tried to take back the reins. So, yes, and here is where I explained. But anyway, adding to that, the Democrats weren't only the conservative party, they also very much believed in white supremacy. To be very clear, they still wanted to push that after the Civil War. They tried to regain that power they'd had afterwards. The Lowry gang was not okay with them taking over, obviously, and they increased their efforts against those representing this group. Non-white and poor white residents of Robeson County, where Henry committed his crimes, supported the gang's efforts and helped them hide. So that made it impossible for the officials to track them down. And that may not sound like much, but here are the numbers. From 1860. There were 8,572 registered whites and 6,917 non-whites. And bear in mind that how many of those registered whites would have also been poor and therefore supporting Henry. So it sounds like it was probably pretty even. So if you've got about half of the county supporting your Robin Hood, that's going to cause problems when you try and capture them. Ultimately, a moderate Republican Party took over, which supported the Reconstruction efforts, but unfortunately, because they were so moderate, they did not follow up on promises made during the campaigning that they would go after the Home Guard members for the unauthorized killings of local natives. So they came into power and everybody was relieved, and then they looked the other way.
Yeah. Gosh, that
sounds
happens.
familiar. The new government also said they could not declare Lowry and his gang no longer outlaws, because there were requests put. It reminds me of the whole Billy the Kid thing. Hey, pardon him because he was going after these bad gang members who were killing their competitors, and that's why he did what he did, right? So they tried to push that same thing with Henry, but they were like, nope, we can't say that he's not an outlaw. We can't pardon them. We can't do any of that. We will give him a fair trial if he turns himself in. So
should fair be in quotation marks?
Probably. So, but with that offer, Lowry chose to surrender. So in December 1868, he surrenders. But then news comes to him that there's a group of conservatives planning on lynching him. And the Republicans didn't appear to be taking the threat seriously. So they were giving him no protection. He was just there in the prison with his one normal guard or whatever. And so he broke out of prison again. So he was never actually tried. So we'll never know if it would have been fair. But this pisses off the Republican leaders. They're like, that's it. So they turn against him completely. He is outlaw number one. They're done with him. So they offer new rewards for him and his band. They actually put an $11,000 bounty on his head alone, and the total bounties offered for his major gang members reached $25,000.
That was a shit ton of money back then.
Yeah, it was. And so the Encyclopedia states these were among the highest rewards that had ever been offered in the history of American manhunts.
Wow.
When a man named Francis Marion Wishart became colonel of the police guard in 1871, he tried a new method of drawing the gang in. He actually took their wives hostage.
Because that's going to end well.
No, kept them in the prison. So Henry and his men, they write a nice little letter. And the letter requires they release the wives, or, quote, the bloodiest times will be here than ever was before. The life of every man will be in jeopardy. So Wishart tucks his tail between his legs and he immediately releases the wives. He tried to be ballsy and he failed. So Henry's last famous act occurred in February 1872. The gang robbed both the sheriff's safe and a store and got away with over $28,000 from the two. And they left the safe from the sheriff's apartment sitting in the middle of the street, empty and open. 3 days after the robbery, Henry disappeared, and he was never seen again. His wife remarried a few years later, and his brother, the Reverend, stated that his brother was dead. He was at a Republican convention, and he was asked about it while he's up there because he was a speaker, and he was like, he's dead. The New York Herald published that report stated he had accidentally shot himself while cleaning his gun. I find that to be bullshit. He knew how to clean his gun.
Yeah.
Wishart of the police guard said his death was a hoax. So, sadly, after he disappeared, all but 2 of his gang were captured or killed. Rhoda, his wife, would claim until her death in 1909 that Henry had escaped. But despite several claims of people having seen him at a funeral, at this and that, his disappearance remains a mystery. And as far as I'm concerned, I think that the police guard did away with him and wanted it quietly done with. So they didn't make it a spectacle. They said, no, he's out there hiding somewhere. And that they did away with his body. That's what I think. So, his time fighting the Confederates, followed by the conservative Democrats, is referred to as the Lowry War. I think it's funny because there's also, there's a what Billy the Kid did was a war
Yes.
as well. But I forget the name of it. Something County. Lincoln County War. There we go. He's still revered among the Lumbee people of North Carolina as a hero. He's on all the North Carolina tourism sites as typically they're viewing him as a hero too. Because that whole Robin Hood thing, it's like he killed the bad guys, not the good guys, so that doesn't count against him. So whether people think he's a hero or not, that's up to them to decide.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Right?
Alrighty then. We're going to go back in time. We're going to go way back in time, and we're going to go to the other side
Past
of the
the
planet.
1860s?
Way past.
Woo!
Way past axe murders. So normally, we're going to talk about St. Olga of Kiev. And I'm just going to start with a disclaimer that I'm going to butcher some pronunciations because...
Kiev.
Yes. And normally if I do something set in a specific time period, I like to say, here's what's happening. Well, you know what? It's hard to find out what was happening in the year 950. Yeah, that's how far back we're going. Because this woman fucked some shit up. So my sources are Wikipedia, which I did not look directly at the primary chronicle, but the Wikipedia, and I have some quotes from it, and the Wikipedia article referenced it a lot. That was written in 1113. It's a lot of history of that part of what is now Russia. There was a website, thought.com, and then there was the National Catholic Register, which had a really hilarious article. I mean, that doesn't sound like it makes sense, but they were actually talking about love thy enemy, but they started out with this woman as their example, and it was just the way they wrote it was fucking hilarious. But they were trying to draw people in, and it would. I totally get what they were doing with it. She was called the original warrior princess.
Yay! Zena.
Yes. So I'm going to go with, if you are historically inclined, I may not have some of the tinier, finer details exactly correct, where things were. I'm going to do my best. And also, I'm going with a more outrageous version of every event as possible. I mean,
Sounds good to me.
yeah, so because that's a better story. This is straight up mayhem. There isn't really mystery. It's straight up mayhem. It might be anti-mayhem because she did kick ass and take names, but she was justified, kind of. But you'd be grateful she kicked your ass because that meant she didn't kill you. You've heard the phrase, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned? That's what I kept thinking of while I was researching this. I don't know if you'd call her scorned or just royally pissed off. We would call her not a woman to fuck with.
Okay.
Do not trifle with her.
No trifling.
So, her exact date of birth is unknown. She could have been born as early as 890 or as late as 925, which is a 35-year difference.
Good Lord.
Yeah, but the record keeping was, not all that it could be back then. Her ancestry was probably, and I'm not sure if it's pronounced Varangian or Varangian, but the translation is fucking Viking.
Yes!
She was born in northwestern Russia. That's what we would call it now. She married Prince Igor I of Kiev, who was also Varangian, and together they produced little Sviatoslav. Okay, apologies.
That sounded good. Go with that.
V. We're
Pretend you know what you're saying.
Yeah. To massively simplify the where and the what. So Igor was the son of Rurik, who founded the Rurik dynasty. That dynasty consolidated power in that region. They conquered neighboring tribes, started the capital in Kiev. The area known as Kievan Rus covered parts of what are now called Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus.
Okay.
So that will kind of...
So it was all like Viking.
Yeah.
I need to know more about the Vikings.
Yes. So now you know kind of where Olga and Igor are starting their married life. So in 945, when Sviatoslav was only 3 years old, Igor went out collecting tribute. And one of the tribes was the Drevlian tribe. So according to the Byzantine historian, and I love this name, Leo the Deacon. I was just like, You gotta be fucking kidding me. There are different stories. Some are that he did, because at one point they were aligned with this tribe, but some say they didn't want to pay tribute any longer. Some say he tried to double dip and collect tribute twice. Nobody really knows exactly why. But according to Leo the deacon, they had bent down 2 birch trees to the prince's feet and tied them to his legs. Then they let the trees straighten again, thus tearing the prince's body apart.
Ah, yes.
So they didn't just kill him, they murdered him in a horrific manner. Now, this is where I say, as horrific as any modern horror film, and then I want to ask you, yay or nay. I think that's terrible.
There's a, what is it? Bone Tomahawk or something? That reminds me, it has Kurt Russell in it.
Oh.
But it is a horror film. The funny thing, it's like a Western, and it's so freaking slow until, again, it's like Midnight Mass, though. It's just these men riding out to find this person who's been taken, captured, or whatever, and they're talking and all this stuff in the middle of nowhere because it's Wild West. And then they find where the people have been taken, and then shit hits the fan. But there's somebody who gets hung up and just slowly sliced from the crotch down. And there's a clown movie like that too, but I can't remember the name.
I'm wondering what's worse, to be slowly sliced into or to be violently yeeted into?
I think slowly sliced,
Probably.
because violently yeeted, he probably died like boop, as soon as it.
Yeah.
You split that body apart, all the guts go. You're dead.
I can't even imagine. It's yeah.
But
so
the
don't
slow
try
carving
imagining
is
this.
awful.
Okay. All right then.
It's quite a scene.
So, after his death, Olga ruled as regent on behalf of their 3-year-old son. So, banner alert, she was the first woman to rule Russia.
Okay.
So, yay. Go Olga. So, the Drevlians.
And yet in the U.S., still no woman has ruled. In terms of modern government.
Yes. So, the Drevlians then sent a boat. They sent 20 messengers to Olga because and when they arrived at her court, they announced that they had killed Igor and demanded that she marry Prince Mal, the man in charge of murdering her husband.
Oh.
So her response, and this is from the Chronicle, "Your proposal is pleasing to me. Indeed, my husband cannot rise again from the dead. But I desire to honor you tomorrow in the presence of my people. Return now to your boat and remain there with an aspect of arrogance. I shall send for you on the morrow, and you shall say, 'We will not ride on horses, nor go on foot. Carry us in our boat,' and you shall be carried in your boat." So, motherfuckers were flattered. Which was completely the wrong reaction for them to have. She was giving them a big thumbs up with one hand, and she was opening for the can of whoop ass with the other hand. So they returned to their boat. I just imagine they're all high-fiving each other. Woohoo!
Yeah.
We taught this bitch what was what. So the next day they bring the boat in again, and they say what she told them to say, and her people rise up and they carry the boat into her I want to say courtyard. That's not the exact right word. So they're feeling pretty fucking smart right up until the boat was dropped into a trench that her people had dug the night before, and they were all buried alive. Every last one of them. And one of the stories has her leaning forward and saying, "Are you feeling exalted now?"
I hope she said that.
I hope so too. So, and you're like, wow, she got even. She's not done. So, hot on the heels of the mass burial, Olga sends a messenger of her own to the Drevlians. And she asked that the very best men of Deriva be sent to her to accompany her so that she can meet the prince with all due honor. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they did.
All due honor.
They sent their best men because that's how you honor someone. So Olga commanded her people to draw baths for them so that they could look their best when they met with her. And once they entered the bathhouse, Olga set it on fire, starting with the door so they could not escape.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, okay. So then, Olga Olga not done yet. So her next step was to appeal to the Drevlian sense of ceremony. So she asked that they prepare great quantities of mead in the city where her husband was killed, so that she could weep over his grave properly and hold a funeral feast in his honor. And they, of course, obliged, because that was the honorable and expected thing to do. God, she sounds like a Klingon, doesn't she? The Klingon, the warrior, do it with honor.
I honestly don't know much about Klingons.
Okay, just sure. Okay, thank you. So, when she arrived at the tomb with a small group of attendants, she wept. She held the big funeral feast, and she invited all the Drevlians to join the feast, except they didn't notice that they were the only ones drinking all that mead that I mentioned earlier.
Is this the red wedding? Or
Yep. Yes, this is a red wedding. Okay. So once it was the red funeral. Mm-hmm. Once they were good and drunk, she instructed her attendants to kill them all. The primary chronicle says 5,000 Drevlians were killed that night.
Holy shit.
Yep. So she returned to Kiev and prepared her army and attacked. The initial battles all ended in Kievan Rus's favor. Then she marched to Iskoristan, which is now Koristan in the northern Ukraine, which is the city where her husband had been murdered. And she laid siege to the city, which lasted a year, which I think shows a lot of patience on her part. After a year, she's just like, fuck it. She sent him a message saying all the other cities have submitted and they're willing to submit tribute. Why won't you do the same? And they replied, rather honestly at this point, we would willingly submit tribute to you, but we're afraid you still want revenge for Igor. And she said, no, what I've done up until now is vengeance enough. Mm-hmm. So then she asked a favor. She said, you've been through hard times. As a tribute, send me 3 pigeons and 3 sparrows from each house. And the Drevlians, of course, were delighted because they thought this was a small price to pay.
Yeah.
We're going to send you all these birds. It's kind of a symbolic.
Where do you find all these birds?
But so they fall all over themselves collecting these birds and sending them. So after they arrived, Olga instructed her army to use threads to attach a small piece of sulfur wrapped in a small cloth to each bird to tie it to its bird's leg. And at nightfall, they set the sulfur on fire and released all the birds.
Oh, poor birds.
That was my thought. That's horrific for the birds. So when the birds, naturally, were released, they tried to return to their nests, which were all over the city. The entire city. They couldn't fight the fire because it seemingly just spontaneously erupted everywhere at once, and it was over their heads.
Yeah.
Because it was in the rafters, it was in the trees, it was in the eaves, it was in the... So when the citizens fled the city, some were immediately killed, some were captured and sent into slavery, and the remainder were allowed to pay tribute. So, I mean, this woman just,
she's badass. She also cray-cray.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, lest you think she was nothing but vengeance personified. So after all this is over, she enacted some of the first legal reform recorded in Eastern Europe. She changed the tribute system to make it fair to the people paying tribute, so that they couldn't be double dipped, or they couldn't come back and ask for tribute before a certain amount of time had passed.
So fair taxation.
Yeah, right. She pioneered fair taxation. I say.
In a way. That was after she took some really intense taxation.
Yeah. She established trading posts and hunting reserves, some of which are still in existence. She successfully defended the power of the throne until her son was old enough to reign. And when he was off on military campaigns, she remained in charge of Kiev.
Okay.
I mean, really, who better to leave it with? I mean, she has proven herself.
Who wants to tell her not to?
Yeah. You got to think even her son's a little bit, okay, Mom.
I'll do whatever you say, Mom.
So, I do have to mention, because I did start this by saying this is Saint Olga of Kiev. So, how did she become a saint? It's not quite as interesting or as bloody of a story, but In the 950s, it's really hard to say these dates. In the 950s, she visited Constantine VII in Constantinople. So apparently the story goes, he was very smitten with her and remarked on how intelligent she was and what a fine countenance she had. And he made a remark that this was a woman fit to rule with him. Except she wasn't particularly interested in marrying anyone. So she told him that she was still a pagan, but if he was willing to baptize her himself, she would convert to Christianity. And he was happy to comply.
Mm-hmm.
Taught her everything, and she, went through all the lessons with her, and she converted. And at her baptism, she was named Helena, or Helena, which also happened to be his wife's name.
Okay, dude.
But here's the thing. Olga was paying attention during her religious studies. She had figured out that by the rules of spiritual kinship, by sponsoring and performing her baptism, she had become his spiritual daughter. To marry her would be an act of spiritual incest, and church law forbade a goddaughter to marry her godfather. So she was able to maintain her political independence, but have this tremendously strong ally now. It seems, though, however, that the conversion was sincere. And there's even some argument that she may have converted before this big public conversion. She did try unsuccessfully to convert her son. And this was the part I told you earlier because it just tickles me. Her son refused. He wanted nothing to do with it. But he did allow any man who wished to be baptized, saying they would not be hindered, only mocked. Which that really cracks me up. So she died of illness in 969 with her son at her side. And although he never converted, he did follow her wishes to have a Christian funeral without a pagan burial feast. She is now credited with founding Russian Christianity with her grandson, Vladimir, who was also later named a saint. So in addition to being...
So is this Russian Orthodox?
Yes. In addition to being a saint herself, she was grandmother to Saint Vladimir and great-grandmother to Saint Boris and Saint Gleb.
Gleb.
Gleb. Gleb. So...
I thought you had to do a lot more than that to become a saint. Isn't there something about 3 miracles and yada, yada, yada?
That might be current. I don't know.
But maybe not Russian Orthodoxy.
And I also don't know Catholic history and wouldn't even pretend to. All I know is a little slice now of Saint Olga.
Once know some of it.
A little.
Because I went to Darren churches.
And I do have to give credit to Thing 2 because she brought this to my attention. She is always like, hey, Mom, did you ever hear about? And I'm like, no, send me that link. And sometimes I follow it up, and sometimes I'm like, no, this is not for me.
You do not want to do this.
This is not the one. But I just thought, what an excellent... I mean, first of all, the horrific way her husband was killed.
Yeah.
Because that's just...
I mean, the example I gave is fiction. So it's still way worse to happen in real life.
Yes. And I mean, to have your husband killed, not just he was double dipping, so he stabbed his ass.
Yeet ripped.
He was yeeted into 2 different directions. I mean, I had heard of drawn and quartering.
Yeah.
Which involves horses.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how the horses felt about that, but I had never heard of this. Yeah. Which is drawing and having.
People did really awful things to, I think about William Wallace, right? Mm-hmm. And how he got ended, which was, maybe I'll do him.
I don't remember how he ended.
Well, it hurt.
I'm sure it did.
I believe it was a public spectacle, and yeah, I'm not going to say because it could be wrong. Well, I'm basing it off a movie.
And then look at the things they used to do to witches, or people who were accused of being witches. I mean, they would lay the thing where they would lay the boards on them,
and pressing them,
stack the rocks on top of them until they.
Get them to admit it.
Yeah.
And then you admit it so that they stop torturing you, or you don't,
and then they kill you.
And then they kill you. Yes. But maybe you die faster, so it's worth it to die a witch.
I always like the particular juxtaposition of, Well, we're going to duck you in the water.
If you drown, you were not a witch, but you're
But
dead
you're
anyway.
dead.
Yeah.
And if you float, which, hello, most of us do.
I just watched, what was it, a Vincent Price movie?
I love him.
I just watched 2 because I also watched, what is it, Haunting of Hill House? House on Haunted Hill. House on Haunted Hill. I always have to do that with those 2. But anyway, I don't remember the name of this one. It was on Shudder, and he's this religious figure, and my God, he's awful. And I was like, don't, Vincent! I've always loved you. But, he's awful. And he was hunting witches. And so and they do the river thing.
Yeah.
All right, I'll throw him in.
She turned me into a newt.
A newt. And yeah, it was stuff like that. It was, we have a problem with this person in this town, so we're gonna, it's amazing how witch hunts and everything that's been called a witch hunt since, how that works.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of freaky. It's really terrifying that people can do that. And yet, we watch it happen online all the time these days. So.
Oh, the witch hunts online, yes.
Yeah, don't like it. But, yeah, at least I guess we're just eviscerating them. Personally, not physically.
Verbally instead of
publicly humiliating them.
So we have a question for you this week. Aren't we smart? We thought it up beforehand.
Yes.
Who is your favorite anti-hero? And we had a couple of examples.
Yeah, so by anti-heroes, again, Robin Hood is a big one because he was robbing people. And in the Kevin Costner movie, he's killing people. But I don't know. I don't know how much of that is true in the real tales. And Deadpool, of course, is an anti-hero. There's lots of good anti-heroes. So we want to hear.
Yes.
We gave a historical example and a fictional. And a fictional. I mean, Robin Hood. But yeah, we want to know. So the question will be posted today, whenever it's, when this is airing.
I like that. It'll be posted today.
Interesting. I signed up for something. I haven't seen if it worked yet, but Facebook has it so that you can access the podcast episodes and get the RSS feed via Facebook.
Oh, good. I was going to ask you if you had seen that because I get the same post and I was like, huh.
Yeah, I set that up yesterday, so I guess you guys will discover if you can do that via Facebook or if you even want to.
Yep.
So, send us your stories,
your questions, your comments,
your fun stuff, whatever, to mysteriesmonstersmayhem@gmail.com. You can submit it on the form on our website, mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com. If you're interested in any of the things I'm doing, that's at thewarriormuse.com on the appearances tab. So there's actually links there that you can access. And
nobody's interested in what I'm doing.
Please.
I'm not doing anything the public is invited to.
That's right. We haven't reached that point yet. Please like, rate, review, share, all of that good stuff. Do that to books too, please. And either way, we appreciate you still tuning in.
Yes. And we will talk to you all again next week.
Bye.
Bye.